I don't think his intention was to stay in China. I think it was to carry on around the world. And I think his humanitarian nature made him stay and help.
你叫我用几个简短的词话，一个是年轻，一个是包容，一个是大爱，一个是无私。
When you think back to George's life, he was really a wise friend and noble friend of China.
He was in China during wartime. He never saw China except in wartime. I think what he saw was 我看到一个新中国. It was in his mind's eye. It was seeing the spirit of the people that made him believe that there would be a new China.
Conditions in Shanghai are appalling. The Japanese army has burned down the surrounding villages and bayoneted the farmers, so the city is full of hungry and homeless folk who watch each other become thinner and colder until they die. The Japanese flag flies everywhere. Shanghai was China's main industrial metropolis, and now it's in tattered ruins. The streets are strewn with dead Chinese soldiers lying as they fell.
When George Hogg arrived in Shanghai in 1938, there had been a terrible battle fought between the Japanese military and the Chinese military over the northern district of Shanghai. It was the most vicious battle of World War II, at least in this part of the world. The Japanese military conducted a systematic bombing campaign targeting a largely civilian population. It's undeniable that China has played a very important and somewhat neglected role in the history of World War II. China held down millions of Japanese troops who were unable to then occupy other parts of Asia and contribute to the building of the Japanese Empire. George Hogg would have seen at least the aftermath of that destructive war. He would have seen a city partly occupied by the Japanese. He would have seen countless thousands of Chinese refugees that were streaming into the foreign settlements. He may have seen some of the Jewish refugees who were coming from Europe, where they were accepted here, welcomed into the city, given refuge and safety.
I hadn't been to Shanghai, and I really wanted to see where George had landed in his journey through China. So I talked to Zoe Reed about a year ago, and we decided that it would be nice to celebrate the 110th anniversary of his birth with a trip retracing his footsteps from Shanghai all the way up to Shandan, trying to get a feel of what George went through, what he witnessed.
Massacre is about promoting understanding and friendship between the peoples of Britain and the peoples of China. We all experienced bad things in the war. I think many British people don't even think the war was anything to do with China. What we're trying to do in Saku is to build empathy. We want to get people to understand some of the historical figures and what they contributed.
In these memorial events, I was there as representative of his family, amongst all the government officials and various people involved with the CIC and Gung He, and I was totally amazed and began to realize really what kind of status he had, but not at home in England. His story wasn't really known.
他本来想游历全世界的，啊，后来他改变了主意，啊，怎么样能够利用自己的力量，来这个帮助中国人民，啊，来赢得这场战争。所以他从上海开始了和中国的缘分。
So when George Hogg arrived in Shanghai in 1938, not only would he have witnessed the aftermath of the Battle of Shanghai, but he also would have heard reports about the Nanjing massacre that occurred in December 1937, when the Japanese army overran the city of Nanjing, which was the capital city of the nationalist government. The nationalist army had vacated the city, left it vulnerable to the predations of the Japanese army. What ensued was a massacre of huge proportions.
He didn't come here, but he met an American journalist, Art Steele, from the Chicago Tribune, and became very good friends. And I think from Art, who was here during the massacre, he learnt a lot of what had been going on and mentioned it in his own book.
到了这个南京审判的时候，对这个数字做了一个界定，就是集体屠杀是28案，屠杀人数是19万；零散屠杀是858案，屠杀人数15万。
The Japanese are told nothing of the horrors perpetrated in China, nor can they be expected to guess at them, with no jumping off place in their own past experience.
Sister Wang Swenma also survived when the massacre happened. She was 12. She was also the survivor. So I have a footprint here.
It is the most ghastly, unforgivable story, and so well commemorated here.
Thank you.
If everybody could see this sort of evidence, maybe people would learn not to behave in such cruel ways.
I hate to get out of here in a way and leave my friends to take things like what happened in Nanjing last year, but I do want to go see what's happening up in the former Red Army, and if I don't go soon, there may be no way of getting up there.
He got a job as a journalist in Hankou, which had become the wartime capital. And for roughly a year, he was there as a journalist. He was allowed to travel around quite freely and investigate.
Today and yesterday have been very heavy. Terrific air raids on the cities of Wuchang and Hanyang across the river, and about 3 miles at either end of Hankou. Afterwards, we all go out in different directions to get the news and take pictures. It is both grueling and gruesome. Yesterday and today, I got the big news of foreign property hit. One of them was on the compound of the Huacheng College, where I'd had the job offered me and might have been teaching.
I think it probably started off as an adventurer, but I'm sure he got caught up in the excitement of being a war correspondent. That soon became humanitarian feelings obviously came through.
他在报道中国的时候，他的视角和其他的记者就不太一样。他笔下的主要人物是我们的平民老百姓，他们是如何在战时中国坚韧地面对生活，把自己的生活过好，所以为我们提供了一个认识战时中国的一个非常宝贵的视角。
So the Japanese took Hankou, and many of the journalists were expelled from China by the Japanese. But he decided he needs to go back to China, so he made a secretive journey. In his British passport, he was able to travel a little more freely through Japan into Korea, Manchuria, and round to Beijing, where he then was smuggled out by English-speaking students at the university there, through secret passages and so on into the countryside, where he met up finally with Nanjing and his guerrilla forces.
他决定去延安去看一看，去了解一下我们的八路军，了解一下我们的边区游击队，他们是在战争中是怎么应对、怎么生产生活的。正是在延安、在边区的这一段经历，让何克改变了自己的想法，觉得我应该深入到后方，了解那些真正的能够反映中国的现状的一些人们。
Here there was an air raid warning. As we leapt from the windows, 3 planes were already circling over the city and the anti-aircraft shells bursting around them. Rough trenches had been prepared beside the line into which those who could get off the train in time flung themselves. I was glad enough to be at the bottom of a pile of others. Bombs exploded on the station as we lay face downwards, breathing deeply the scent of the damp earth.
To see these wonderful museums, several of them, all talking about the wartime period, and then particularly the horrific era when the Japanese swept through Shanghai and into Nanjing, and it was very moving indeed.
Whilst he was in Hankou, before he was expelled, he was the first journalist to visit the CIC headquarters. He was really impressed by the idea of this cooperative organization. So finally, after this year traveling with the guerrilla forces, he joined up with the CIC in Baoji.
何克先生呢，根据我们掌握的材料，1939年10月份到了宝鸡，他是在晋察冀边区见到了朱德总司令聂荣臻司令员。朱德总司令说：“你应该到西北去，你到宝鸡去。”
It is known as an historic scene of racial and political struggle, as a vast economic hinterland only recently being opened up as Japan drives Chinese initiative out of the coastal cities. As a military base of vital strategic importance in which guerrillas and young students are teaching the people to live new lives of resistance. The Northwest is an ideal place from which to watch new China taking shape. Here is seen at its best the Chinese people's amazing adaptability.
What he saw in China, the horrors, and the way the ordinary Chinese people were somehow coping, and then saw this possibility, the CIC and all the other people behind the CIC, how they really tried to get all this massive number of refugees up and running and doing stuff and creating some kind of economy in the hinterland. It must have been really, really inspiring.
In September 1938, Baoji's first cooperative was launched with 9 blacksmiths. But by April 1940, there were about 3,000 industrial cooperatives spread throughout 8 of China's provinces and making a range of 500 kinds of goods.
正因为是这个抗战工业，日军的飞机呢一路炸到宝鸡来，宝鸡这些工厂林立的烟筒是它的重要目标。
Day we left one place, 34 aeroplanes flew over our heads and bombed it terribly. And the next day we saw the same planes again and arrived in the evening to find our destination still burning, women crying and coffins everywhere. Next day the Japanese got very close with their armies and people had to start fleeing even before they had picked out the remains of their dead and belongings from the burning rubble.
所以在这个当中呢，全场职工同仇敌忾。日军你轰炸的时候，我就躲到窑洞里，能保护住我的机器呢，因为70%的设备在窑洞里头啊。
This is the China that is rebuilding. Many of the people in these co-ops were penniless refugees a year ago. Now they are settling down as part of their new community and making a valuable contribution to the country's economy, as well as being once more in a position to support themselves and their families. I've got a change of jobs to being a schoolmaster for a boys' technical and cooperative training school. I am dean. It is very interesting. Not an ordinary technical school. The idea is to get them young, get them from tough backgrounds, so that they will learn to look on the school and on CIC as their home. One of the most amazing little villages in China. Here, the people are terribly poor, though untroubled by wars and refugees. And children under the age of 15 often go right through a winter without a single pair of trousers.
Those windows would have been paper, not glass.
Yes.
So getting this white light in, and no view out.
And the boys would stick their fingers through them.
Yeah.
Developing that school, creating it, that was such an important part of his life here. Developing his very much own character. The 2 elder ones were amongst the first students of the Xuanshipu school, which had started about a year before George took on the task of being headmaster. And then the younger 2 were in an orphanage for a while after the mother died. He saved their lives, basically.
Here in our place, everything is very calm. No bombing even, as all the Japanese planes are temporarily engaged elsewhere. We have a school here full of oddly humorous boys. They are always dropping around to have a look at the strangely funny foreigner, drink some of his peculiarly funny coffee, bang on his typewriter, play on his gramophone, and generally have a good time. I'm very Chinese by now. One just can't help it, living right here amongst them for so long. And I think some of my peculiarities, rather naive, rather idealistic, rather laughter-loving, have much in common with the non-citified type of young Chinese.
We'll be walking, emulating the start of the Little Long March when he led the school out of Shuangqipu, westwards into Gansu.
So we'll get a taste of that as we start walking from here. Consider the fact that they did this during the winter times. You know, they're crisscrossing the frozen rivers. At times, the lorries would break through the ice.
In 5 days, we made 57 kilometres over the mountains and 2 carts overturned. It was the worst time of the year over high mountains and the coldest winter for 20 years, and the roads were covered in snow and ice.
Absolutely amazing trek it must have been. He just determinedly carried on and brought that school out of the danger of the war zone, saving all these kids.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear villagers, good evening. Welcome the relatives and the friends of George Hogg to come to this beautiful Tiaohe village in Liangdang County, along the footsteps that George Hogg once walked.
Seeing the reaction of the local people to George and the group we were in was just staggering.
It's on the Little Long March. They were greeted in every village they came to and treated with respect and kindness, and given housing in those winter nights. Clearly he's remembered.
We have just 60 boys here now, with another 20 smaller ones coming on from Langzhou in the summer, and perhaps some local kids. We are still busy fitting up our various workshops. The whole of one side of the compound is given over to work. In the centre, the biggest temple holds 3 remaining Buddha statues. All down the other side are classrooms. At the back, there are dorms.
The place was recognizable, but now it's some other world.
So this was the first building?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So the
We were then taken to the new campus, and my word,
welcome to Bailie Vocational College.
they've kept the idea alive, and his legacy is strong there. It's gone way beyond George's dreams. Personally, for him, it didn't end too well, did it? But my word, his spirit lives on. His sense of purpose, which wasn't there when he thought of joining the cooperative movement. As time went by, getting into his story here, beyond what I had known and whilst writing the book, one began to get a much better sense of really why he stuck it out.
向后退！他一直待在中国，他最后把他的生命贡献在了山台。
His love for the Shandan school was intense. Sometime in the spring of 1945, Aylwin had written a song. In Shandan we are born again. We will stay in Shandan till we die.
"作为老校长呢，我们应该是一个敬佩，首先是非常的敬仰、敬佩他的这个艰苦奋斗的精神。
I think he did make an amazing sacrifice, and in those days, coming to China and just empathizing with people, giving his all to the Bailie School. I think that's what has really captured people's hearts.
Well done, guys.
It's been an amazing experience in following my Uncle George's footsteps.
George Hogg was one of the few foreign friends of China who really penetrated into the life of the Chinese people. They never treated him as a foreigner because they never felt that he was in any way foreign to them.